When people think about survival weapons, they picture knives, guns, or maybe even a bow and an arrow. But long before those tools were common, nature provided everything a person needed to hunt, defend, and survive, if they knew where to look. Some of the earliest and most effective weapons in history didn't come from a forge or a factory. They grew wild. Thorns, poison, wood that's harder than iron, and plants that could kill you slow or fast, depending on how they were used. Native American tribes, Viking raiders, medieval soldiers, and even guerrilla fighters in modern times all understood that nature is not just for food and medicine, it's literally a fully stocked armory. Take Osage orange trees, for examples. The pioneers who settled the Midwest didn't have barbed wire back then, or any metal. Instead, they planted Osage orange hedgerows, thick, gnarly trees covered in sharp thorns that could turn away cattle, wildlife, and people. Once those trees grew together, they formed a living fence that was nearly impossible to cross without leaving blood behind. In fact, before barbed wire was invented, these trees were called hedge apples, and they were used specifically to keep property protected. The Comanche and Kiowa tribes of the Great Plains valued Osage orange wood so highly for bow making, they would travel hundreds of miles to trade for it. And it was prized not just for its strength, but its flexibility. A bow made from Osage orange was considered one of the best weapons a warrior could carry. Black locust trees were another favorite weapon of the Old World. Native American tribes, like the Cherokee and the Iroquois, used the wood from these trees to make spears and weapon shafts. Black locust is so dense and rot-resistant that a sharpened stick made from it could last years buried in the ground, perfect for pitfall traps or defensive stakes around a camp. In Eastern Europe, black locust trees were sometimes planted along property lines, not just for their strength, but because their roots grow deep and help stabilize loose soil, making it a lot harder for invaders to tunnel or dig beneath walls or fences. Then there's hawthorn. European settlers brought this thorny little tree with them from across the ocean because they knew its value. In England and Ireland, hawthorn was often planted around graveyards and sacred sites as protection, both spiritually and physically. Those long, super sharp needle thorns could punch right through leather, boots, or horse tack. And in a pinch, those thorns could even be used to sew wounds shut or stitch clothing. But nature doesn't just provide sharp things, it provides poison too. Throughout history, different groups used toxic plants to coat weapons or defend their territory. Some Native American tribes were known to use the sap from poison ivy or poison sumac on their arrowheads. In ancient Europe, warriors would sometimes coat their blades with extracts from nightshade, hemlock, or foxglove, better known as digitalis. Even if the weapon didn't kill immediately, the toxins would enter the wound and finish the job later. Foxglove is especially nasty because the compounds in the plant affect the heart. Just brushing against foxglove won't usually hurt you, but if someone with a heart condition eats even a small amount, it can be deadly. So imagine planting a field of these beautiful flowers around your homestead. They'd look harmless to someone passing through, but the danger would be waiting for anyone desperate enough to forage in your garden without knowing better. The same could be said for poison hemlock. This is a plant that looks a lot like wild carrot or parsley. To an experienced forager, the difference is obvious. But to a hungry, desperate person unfamiliar with wild plants, mistaking hemlock for food is probably going to be their last meal. Ancient Greeks used poison hemlock to execute criminals. It was how Socrates died. Planting it strategically could be a subtle but effective layer of defense. In medieval Europe, there are records of entire castle gardens being planted with poisonous or hallucinogenic plants as a form of chemical warfare. Interesting. Plants like belladonna, henbane, and datura were used not only to poison but to confuse and disorient enemies who unknowingly consumed them. Roman soldiers were known to poison the tips of their pila, these long throwing spears, with extracts from hellebore or monkshood. These plants did not just kill, they weakened enemies quickly by causing vomiting, dizziness, or paralysis, making them easy targets even if the wound wasn't fatal. Other cultures relied on natural traps. As in South Asia, bamboo was a weapon all on its own, as we know. Guerrilla fighters used sharpened bamboo stakes, known as punji sticks, buried in the ground with the points facing up. These traps were often smeared with mud or even animal waste to cause infection if someone was unlucky enough to fall on them. Bamboo grows fast, it's silent, and when sharpened properly, it's razor sharp. During the Vietnam War, guerrilla fighters didn't just use bamboo spikes. They created false trails lined with tripwire triggered traps that would send sharpened bamboo darts flying out of the underbrush. Silent, devastating, and nearly impossible to detect without local knowledge. In colder climates, people use plants like stinging nettles to create natural barriers. Nettles might not be deadly, but falling into a patch with bare skin can cause a burning rash that lasts for hours. Some homesteaders even planted nettles around their chicken coop or garden to keep predators out, and it worked. Some old European homesteads even used patches of wild roses or brambles to create natural trap corridors, narrow paths leading to the only visible entrance of the home. And these plants were flanked by plants so dense with thorns that anyone trying to sneak through them would get shredded. And it wasn't just about what you could plant, it was about what you could make. In ancient Japan, mulberry bark was used to create strong rope and bowstrings. In Viking times, yew trees provided wood for some of the most powerful longbows in history. Even pine resin had a role, used to waterproof gear, seal wounds in emergencies, or create a sticky trap to slow enemies down. The Huns, who terrorized Europe in the 4th and 5th centuries, were famous for using everything in their environment as a weapon. They would even tie animal bones or sharpened sticks along roads and trails to injure enemy horses, slowing down cavalry units before they ever reached the battlefield. Nature provided weapons in the form of plants, trees, and simple materials long before humans had metal tools. And it wasn't just ancient history or far-off tribes using nature as a weapon. Right here in early America, those first settlers, the frontiersmen and militias, used these same strategies to fight for their survival against one of the strongest armies in the world at the time. During the Revolutionary War, American fighters used what the British considered ungentlemanly tactics. They would hide in forest, using trees for cover, setting ambushes in dense thickets, and luring redcoat patrols into bogs or rocky terrain where their formations fell apart. Some militias even used sharpened stakes, again, like the punchy sticks that we know today, buried along forest trails to cripple cavalry horses or slow down enemy advances. Others created crude traps using logs or branches waited to fall onto marching soldiers. The ingenuity came from knowing what to use and how to use it. And in a true grid down scenario, or SHTF, all of that knowledge could matter again. You might not have a gun or a stockpile of ammo forever, and you need to find alternatives to supplement that stockpile and make it last longer. But if you know how to turn trees into traps, thorns into fences, and plants into poison, you've already been better prepared than most. Because nature is still an armory, waiting for someone smart enough to use it.